when discussing grid template columns and grid template rows, we can use the auto tag to automatically just allow our content to grow to that size, right? There is a shorthand we can use to help with that, and that's just going to be called grid-template. And if we want to take this and combine it into a shorthand, we just say grid template auto, and that means, you know, all of our things. Like if we are going to do an auto, and then 300 pixels is going to be a row, and then 200 pixels is going to be a row. So the first one would be automatically determined, then 300 pixels and 200 pixels, right? We'd want to put that right in. So we just copy that out and we paste that in there like so. But I want them all to be automatically determined. And then this next row, I'd go ahead and cut that out and put that right there. And you know, as such, that's kind of a shorthand of what we just did. And you can see, you know, it appears exactly the same as we did. But just for simplicity's sake, so you guys can kind of look at it and make sense, let's go back to this. I just wanted to show the shorthand version of that. Now, when we're talking about different units of measurement as we move through this, you know, first off, we can use an actual pixel amount. And you can see I'm using here in this a 3-column layout. Let me resize that back. A 3-column layout that is 250 pixels, 150 pixels, and 350 pixels, and we can see that there. We can also use what's called fractional units, and that is shown up by saying 1FR, 1FR, and 1FR. And if we refresh that, you can see they're all evenly spaced. Now, we kind of talked about this a little bit in Flexbox, but this is where each one would be 1/3, because there's 3 rows. It would be 1 fraction of the 3, okay? And so if I put that as 2 right here and I save that, you can see how that becomes 50% because it is 2/4 of the total amount. So we have 3 rows, but we have 1 row, 2, 3, 4. And if we put that up to 3, you can see that would be 3/5, right? And if we were to put this as a 2, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that would be 3 out of 6, 1 out of 1/6, and 2/6. So hopefully that makes sense to you a little bit. There it is there. That's really important, and that concept of using fractions is really important. We can move away from fractions if we want, and we can do percentages. So we could say the first one is going to be 50%, the second one is going to be 25%, and the third one is also going to be 25%. And you can see those percentages taking place there. I normally don't recommend using percentages over fractional units. I would use fractions more than anything. Then we also have auto, and again, auto just allows it to automatically kind of fill the content. And you can see in this case, it's filling all the way across the screen and taking it up and shifting everything down, even though, well, that's one. Let's do 3 columns of auto and show you that. So now you can see they're evenly spaced, but they're trying to take up the best space that they can in there. So that makes sense, hopefully. We have one that's called MinMax, and MinMax is kind of interesting on how that works. So let's say we wanted to take 3 1FR, 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 and on this one in particular, we're going to say we want, you know, if it's going to be 1/3, you know, when I resize this, that can mean they could get pretty small, but maybe I don't want one to get so small. And so what I'm going to do is on this one right here, I'm going to take that out, and I'm going to write out this thing called MinMax. MinMax. And we're going to put in here the smallest we're okay with that being, and that might be 100 pixels. And then the largest we're okay with it being, and that's going to be 1 fraction in this case. So let's take a look at that and refresh it and resize. Okay, and so when you go small, let's go up to 200 pixels. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so you can see maybe even 300 pixels just for the heck of it there. Okay, so you can see the smallest this will ever get is 300 pixels. But as it grows, it can become 1/3, and then they'll all grow together, okay? So you can set a minimum amount you want that to be seen, and then a maximum amount. And altogether, that counts as one entry or one column inside of our template. And so that's important to kind of establish that, how we want that going. Now, let's go back to 1FR, like so, and show you another way. Now, we could have a bunch of columns. Maybe we're building 6 columns or 12 columns across our screen and filling them with different content. Well, we can do a shorthand way to do that, and that's called repeat. Okay, and repeat, the way we do that is we say how many times we want that to repeat, and then we say the value we want to repeat. So maybe we're going to just say 1FR. And so you can see that simple example here of repeating back just, a 1FR, 1FR, 1FR. Maybe we want to have, we're going to repeat this maybe twice, and we're going to go 1FR and 2FR, and this is going to look kind of weird, but we'll do that. So you can see we have this repeating 1FR, 2FR, 1FR, 2FR, and we have that done twice before it goes to the next row. You can also maybe mix and match stuff. So we could say we want to repeat 1FR, 2FR twice, but maybe rather than 1FR right here, we want to say we'll put in that MinMax we put in before. And that can look something like this, where we say, okay, we want to repeat 2 columns. So there's the first column, and here's the second column. Okay, and this column can be this. The smallest it's going to be is 300 pixels, but it can grow up to 1FR. And this one's going to be 2FR, and then we're going to repeat that twice, and that's going to look kind of weird, But we're breaking outside of the thing now. But you can see now where this is maintaining that 300 pixels. And it, once we grow beyond and it becomes one fraction, well, that can't because we have a min or a max width applied to our wrapper here. But you can see how that would go. Maybe I can take off that max wrapper really quick. Max width, I'll take that off, and now that should grow a little bit cleaner. So we grow up, and you can see how that keeps going bigger. And these can grow up to 2FR. This is always going to maintain 1FR, or at least 300 pixels. So kind of a unique way of doing that. But we can change up how our columns are going to be. And this can also be done for our rows. Typically, I'll let my rows just autofill to what they're doing, but we can do that. Okay, let's go back and let's just repeat 3 times 1FR, and that's a simple, straightforward kind of grid that we've got there that can kind of grow how we want it to. Now on those, we're going to apply something new here, and we're going to call this one grid gap. And grid gap allows us to apply a gap to everything. And so maybe I'm going to put 2 M's or 2 rems. I probably should have put on here. And what that's going to do is, essentially the 2 letter M's, right? Maybe that's a little too big, so I'm going to go back to 1. And you can see how we have that around there. Now, if I put 1 rem for the first and 2 rem for the second, you can see how the 1 rem's applied, above and below, and 2 rems on the side. So you can mix and match those if you want, but typically I like the consistency when we're talking about keeping things looking visually aligned a little bit better and being consistent. That tends to be a little bit nicer when we do that. The last thing I wanted to show you in this section is not so much affecting the container like we've been working with here, but affecting an individual item. And so inside my HTML, let's go to this first child here, and I'm going to say ID equals grid1. And we're going to go back into our CSS, and somewhere on here, let's go down by all this. I'm going to say inside of our gallery, we're going to look for grid 1, and we're going to use order. And if you remember this with Flexbox, we can change the order of items, and everything by default gets an order number of 0. So if I put in 0, Nothing should change, as you can see here. But if I put in 1, let me save it and look at it, you can see how we've moved that down to the end. And so the stacking, is taking place where this is 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and then because this is 1, it goes up at the top. And so you can go in the negatives, you can go in the positives, and it's just a way of kind of reorganizing this. You got to be careful with it though. Typically, you just want to visually move items around. Maybe you want a menu to shift around a certain way. Maybe you want a gallery like this to kind of move around. That's typically the way one would use this.